Sorry, I'm just stretching my arms. You know what? Fuck a cold open. I guess I'm into Spider-Man, bitch. Hello, everybody. What's up? Welcome back to the New Slapping K-pop podcast. It's your girl Maria, and it is peak summer, and I'm here with Kayla and Sammy.
Hello.
Hi, Barbie.
Hey, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
At least at the time we're recording this, it's peak summer.
We
I
love
forget
Barbie.
when this, yeah.
It's also
Hey,
peak
the time it comes out,
Barbie, yeah.
it's peak Barbie.
It's like peak Barbie time.
I did
so.
Barbenheimer, guys. I saw it in the big-ass IMAX theater screen.
I also Barbenheimer.
I did not Barbenheimer.
It was very loud.
Because I don't care about Oppenheimer, but I do love Barbie.
Did you do the big screen
Barbie's
thing?
great. Yes.
Oh.
The big screen was very fun. Also, I don't know why I went to see a movie in just the loudest possible version of it when about a bomb.
Yeah, you know, it was
so loud.
I'm glad I picked the seats I picked because it was like
I saw
maybe
it in
a
Dolby
smidge too
theater,
close.
and the speakers were like, thought I was dying.
I know the scene when they were like doing the whole thing when Josh Peck had his hand over. Oh, by the way, Josh Peck's in that film. Josh Peck is
also
in that
the thing
movie.
that distracted me the most.
That feels like it would
I
be
was
very
like, no,
distracting
Josh
just
Peck
in
was in that movie.
Oppenheimer all of a sudden.
I'm pretty sure
Josh
the guy.
Peck, most
Also, I'm pretty
distracting
sure the guy who is Wednesday's love interest in Adam's Family Values is in this film too.
Oh,
Looks
shit.
just
Yes,
like him, except
because
older
he's
and
also
fatter.
in 10 Things I Hate About You and
Oh,
the
damn.
Santa Claus.
Oh God, he is.
He is
No wonder
the
why
guy
he looks
from both of those
familiar.
movies, yes.
Oh my
Also,
God.
the one kid from Sky High is also in that movie.
That
Oh
also
no,
is
Sammy, the guy
distracting.
from the one of the Screen 5 villains is in that movie, playing the fucking
Yes,
bongo drums.
Jack Quaid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
This is not a Barbie and Oppenheimer podcast.
It's
No,
not,
it's
in
not.
case anyone was curious.
But you
That's
know,
not
we
what
had
we're
to
here
see it for the
about.
FOMO of it all, right?
But you know,
for the FOMO.
Hi,
of it all.
Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
All right,
Hi,
but
K-pop
we are
Barbie.
book girls, apparently.
We're here making
Is
so
this
much content about
booktube?
books
We're
this
doing
year.
booktube, I guess, but a very specific genre. Of
I mean,
booktube.
look, let's be honest. We have a long storied history. We were going to do an episode on this book before this book came out because there's
Yes.
a storied history about this book.
There's so much like backstory to the book that
Too much.
The backstory is almost more interesting than
yeah.
the book.
Oh God.
But
Actually,
at the
speaking
same
of which,
time,
we should talk about
no
the backstory.
K-pop people are talking about this book either, so we will be the only video made about
Which
this
is
book.
I feel like
surprised
a
K-pop
large
people
amount of
aren't.
people don't even know about the book because of
No.
because
Not even
of
the BTS
the
fans?
circumstances behind the book. Like so few people, I think, knew about it generally.
Not even the BTS fans, really.
Again, I
I've
don't think a
seen,
lot of
like,
people
no-
care about books.
I've seen like zero content on this book outside of the people trying to like guess who has bullied BTS off of the literal
That.
2-sentence line in this book that was vaguely referencing it. Like,
So, I have looked up the BTS book on YouTube just to see if literally anyone at the time of recording it has, which is not that far off of when we're going to post this because we are weirdly on top of schedule for this, but
I know, because we did need time to read the book.
we did need time to read the book. The only thing I have seen is I've seen like 3 videos of people unboxing the book.
But not reading it.
I mean, most of these videos came out the day the book came out. And I've also seen a bunch of videos of just actual book talk people reading books that BTS has recommended or actually read.
Okay.
So those are the 2 things that happen when you talk about the BTS book. I don't know if maybe people are just we did read this book rather quickly because we did want to make this somewhat timely.
I read this whole book in a day, essentially.
I read this book maybe over a combined like 3 days, even though I did sit it down for like almost a month.
I will say it is kind of a hefty book. It's like a 500-page book. It's like, it's not hard to read, but there's just a lot of content there, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of words in it, and it's actually a very well put together book.
And a
But
fuck ton of QR
before we-
codes, man.
Yes, like
love the
300 QR codes.
We'll get to the QR
Oh,
codes, but I
God.
think we have to, before we talk about the content of its character, we must talk about its past.
Yes.
Mm.
So, I have a very fun story that does, honestly, the reason I made this is because I do think that this story needs to be put to record somewhere.
It does. Like, we do need
Or
to
else
give an
it will be
oral
lost.
history of the book. We do need that.
And that is honestly what this YouTube channel is turning into, is our just oral histories of shit that
history
happened.
of K-pop events,
So,
really.
As one would know, this year has been a very large year for Taylor Swift. There's a point to this. I'll get to it. Just bear with me when I
Spoiler
bring up
alert,
Taylor
she's on a
Swift.
massive ass world
She's
tour that's
on
going
the
into
biggest
next
tour.
fucking year, at the end of next fucking
And
year.
you know what?
It is incredibly
you know what?
relevant to the book.
It's a
you
very
just
relevant.
Wait. It's incredibly relevant.
Just wait. Also, good for Taylor Swift. I mean, I'm not a Swiftie, but weirdly, TikTok does, I believe I am, because I've gotten a lot of Eras Tour content, and you know what? That Eras Tour seems like everyone had a great time, and I'm happy for them.
I think that if you're like a female in your 20s, you just get the Eras Tour.
And you're
Specifically a
white.
white female in
And
your
you're
20s.
white.
Yes, absolutely.
I also
You're
get
white.
them, but not nearly as much as you do, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I think it was just because I think the outfits are cute. And you know what? Everyone looked like they were having a
I get
wonderful
the stupid
time, and I'm
videos
happy
on
for them.
Reddit about the Eras Tour. Like, for example, all of them packing a train once the concert ends, and all of them standing outside and trying to bum rush, like, fucking Seattle Stadium or something
And you
like
know
that.
what?
That's the
Everyone
stuff
looked
I'm
like they were
seeing.
having a great time
They're
in
having
all their little
fun.
fun pink
Yeah.
cowboy hats. Have a good time, everybody.
Yeah.
Maybe don't wear I hope the heels are for the Instagram, not for the concert. Just saying. Save your feet.
Seems
But,
awful.
so,
Yeah, it
I
seems
have
terrible.
been on Taylor Swift Talk. And then, one day, I receive a TikTok of someone in their car, because of course, talking about, oh my god, Taylor Swift is releasing a memoir. Keep bearing with me. Taylor Swift is releasing a memoir. Everyone's excited. And what the proof of it is that there is a
There is
book.
none really, but
There is no proof, but Flatiron Books put out a book with no title. I think it's just summer release R56 whatever the hell. It's just it is a title. It is an unknown book. It is under the category of history. The only description of it is that I believe, I don't even know if they started out, but at some point it comes out that it is a
it's like a
memoir of a
nonfiction,
popular artist.
Music
It's a music artist memoir. And then the date comes out that it's releasing June 13th. And no, July 13th. July 13th, sorry. July 13th. And everyone's like, well, Taylor Swift's in the middle of her Eras Tour. 13 is a thing. Everyone just putting the pieces together. And they're like, it's a Taylor Swift memoir. Everyone's excited. The book is selling like hotcakes. It is at one point, it is the best-selling book on BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com. The book has no title yet. And then 2 days later, a bunch of people a bunch of booksellers are feeding into this.
A lot of
They're
small
like,
bookstores
yes,
are absolutely
go.
like monetizing on that, which
Yes,
is a big mistake, which we will
That
learn.
was a mistake.
We will learn.
We will learn in 2 seconds. Then, like a day later, I'm like, oh, Taylor Swift's releasing a memoir. That'll be a time. That'll be a time for the internet when we have to read that memoir. But you know what? It's a Taylor Swift memoir. Why am I not surprised? But also weird timing to release it in the middle of your tour. When the hell did you write this?
Right.
But that's a lot of thoughts.
Anyway.
Also, in the middle of your re-recordings feels like a weird time. But you know what? You do you, Taylor Swift.
Mhm.
Then, like 2 days later, a bunch of people come out of like, well, it could just as easily be a BTS memoir. Because July 13th, for people that it's revealed that the date that the memoir's identity, if you will, is going to be released is June 6th, which is obviously BTS's anniversary date. And then July 13th is the date that they officially said that it's like Army anniversary day. And that makes sense in another way. So people are like, then you have dueling fandoms out here being like, well, now you guys at a Taylor Swift. Is it? No, everyone's just confused. So they're like, well, it still could be Taylor Swift. It could be BTS, because weirdly they fit both of these people.
Which is wild.
That's
when you
also
think about
weird
it.
that it fits both
really
of these
wild.
people.
It fits that the dates make a lot less sense for Taylor Swift
For
than they
Taylor
do BTS.
Swift,
Like you
yes.
got to do a lot more digging and like weird
You have to do
connecting
math
of
for
dots
Taylor
for the
Swift is the
for the
thing.
dates to work for Taylor Swift. Rather than it
Yeah.
be this is the BTS anniversary and this is the fan club anniversary. Like
Yeah, you have to do a lot more thoughts. Then you see all the same booksellers be like, so I'm just gonna cancel the Taylor Swift, all of the pre-orders, because a bunch of people are just bought this thinking it was a Taylor Swift book, when really it's not gonna be a Taylor Swift book. And my thought with that is, no, people should live with their choices.
absolutely. If you
Live
made
with
that
your
you
cho-
made that
you
decision
bought-
to order an untitled book, like that's on you.
Yep. And then a solid month, because I believe this was going on in May, late April. A solid month before the book was supposed to be announced, Flatiron Books came out and was like, no, it's a BTS book. It's not a Taylor Swift book, which honestly, that ruins the fun a little bit. How kind of sad is it for BTS that they couldn't even get their rollout because of Taylor Swift? That's a little sad.
I think HYBE had to make a statement early, essentially like a soft drop of the, hey, this is a BTS
I don't think,
book.
no,
This
I don't
is
think it
not
was HYBE.
whatever."
I do think it was Flatiron who was like, fuck. We're gonna end up with so much. If we wait a month for this, people are gonna get so pissed. And then it's just gonna be a weird thing of like real pre-orders and then people wanting to cancel a pre-order. It's just gonna be a mess
Because
if you wait.
the actual release date, we didn't even get to that point because of all of the drama that was happening. So it kind of ruined the hype for the book. The fact that the Taylor Swift fandom just jumped on it like that.
Yeah. And like, I understand being excited, but there was nothing to be excited for.
It was an untitled memoir. That was all we had. That was literally all the
Especially
information.
considering if you thought through, like, Taylor Swift doing this in the middle of her re-recordings, in the middle of her tour, not even letting herself be finished with any of those. Like, it makes sense for Taylor Swift to do a memoir, like, in 2 years when the tour is finished.
Right. Yeah, it was a lot to just make that jump of logic so fast, and it completely
I think it was because this was
the release of the book.
I think this was because it was the Taylor Swift summer and Taylor Swift was just on the mind.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it was an oof.
Big
so
oof.
that's how I learned about this book, and that's how me and Kayla immediately pre-ordered it before, like, the official HYBE announcement
I
had
know,
even
you guys
come out.
told me.
Yep.
Because I think HYBE's official announcement actually came out on the day it was supposed to. Because there's, like, a video, there's a bunch of things for it, but, like, the fact that everybody
How
already
many
knew.
Swifties do you think
Yeah.
bought the book?
A lot. Like, an ungodly amount of people.
It was the number one
How
book
many
on
do you think
Amazon.
canceled?
Oh, most of them.
A lot.
Most of
But,
them,
like,
if not
the
all.
book still apparently sold very well. It's a New York Times bestseller. So good for BTS now also being New York Times bestsellers. So the book isn't really a memoir, though. It's not an autobiography.
No.
It goes through a lot
It
of
is
memories,
very
though.
clearly. It's
It
very
goes through a lot of
clearly
memories, but
written
it's
by
the
a third party who has interviewed
Yeah.
the members.
Yes.
And
It's very much like a lot of mainly it feels much more like a political memoir than a celebrity memoir, because all political memoirs are written in this style where it is the actual writer of
I mean,
this
except
book
it's not really about politics
talking
at all,
about-
though, to be honest.
No, I'm saying the way it's written is like a political
Oh.
memoir in that it's not being written by the
No,
person.
yeah.
It's written by someone who knows and has done extensive research
But
on
also,
the
do you
person.
really think any
'Cause
member
also
of BTS
it's not
would have
just
time
an
for it,
interview.
though?
it's one of the most
gives
well
so much
written
content.
It's one of the most well written like pieces on K-pop that exist for sure. Like it
Oh,
is
absolutely.
True.
super well written. The guy did so much research, clearly has knowledge about the K-pop industry and everything surrounding
Yeah,
it.
I
Like,
know Kwan's
honestly,
report-wise.
He's gone
Great-
through so much
great job.
context.
Yeah.
He's so
Talks
he's
about the big
honest-
so
three,
thorough.
talks about other
He,
things.
he talks about the actual landscape
talks about the
of
Mama
K-pop and
Awards
does
and the
give so much
MMAs,
content.
Like, oh, he covers everything.
He
the guy
he
knows
goes
his
through
stuff for sure.
he gives so much content about what the K-pop industry is and why BTS is doing is either different or influential or what. There's a lot of context given, which also means that I do think that weirdly, if you want to introduce someone to K-pop as a concept and they're not, this is one of the better pieces to introduce people to K-pop generally. And I know it's like, it's the BTS memoir, but weirdly, you get so much content and so much history.
Yeah,
That
and
it's
I
a really
honestly
good way of
Yeah.
doing that.
I honestly feel like this is the history of like not only BTS but so many other K-pop groups have a similar
Oh, yeah.
similar story. And it's not like clearly this is about BTS and it's written to be about them. But I feel like by reading this, like you get a much better idea of the K-pop industry and what I think a lot of groups go through on like the general basis, because it starts essentially when all of the members become trainees up until it ends at their Grammy performance. So you get
Yes.
really the full scope of their career up and through that point in time.
The thing with it I also absolutely like is that I do think it is sort of only BTS that could write this, because of the way I think South Korean law works. You do have to be there are, other than one person, there are no names in this book. They make references to people have said things about us. People have looked down on us. There are no, other than one person, which we'll get to.
Yeah, it's
no
very,
names.
I think a lot of it's due to the
And
anti-defamation laws.
Yeah, you have to do that in Korea because you cannot write just a slap.
Yeah, there isn't really, it doesn't sound like there's much freedom of speech necessarily in Korea, because there's like a lot of consequences.
The slander laws are very,
South
you have
Korea
to have
has
such
very intense
concrete
anti-defamation laws.
Yeah.
You have to have such insane amounts of proof of you have to prove that they said it. It can't just be that they might have said it. But the thing with it is that BTS has gone through so much, has reached a level of success, but also there are no crazy scandals that they have to address. There is nothing that, they're not bitter toward their company. They're not, it's sort of the
no
only
members
group that
have
could
left.
do
I mean,
that.
if they do have problems, they
members
did
have
not
left.
mention about anything in the book.
But what I'm saying is that there are no outward problems. They seem happy. Nothing of what is said in this book contradicts anything I've ever seen happen about
True.
BTS. At no point has BTS ever had a grievance in that way, of a public grievance or anything like that. They are sort of the only group that could do this, while also giving such clear insight, and also, unfortunately, without everyone looking at it and them coming off as whiny. Because that's the other thing about memoirs, is if you do it with the wrong people, they come off as very whiny. Whether that's correct or not, whether we are just our own aspersions or whatever, but that's another factor to add into that. And I don't think anything about this book comes off as whiny. They're all quite eloquent, surprisingly.
No,
I know
whiny.
that this is a translated book. They're very eloquent in what they're talking about.
Yeah, the translation I thought was pretty solid. Yeah.
The translation is quite well. And I do think that, overall, they explain themselves. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that they're talking about, they do talk about, different things of when they felt anger and disappointment. And it's not just all sunshine and rainbows. We'll get to one person that's, oh boy, is it not sunshine and rainbows.
Yep.
But
I will say, I think out of all of the members' perspectives, really enjoyed J-Hope and Suga's interviews the most. I feel like I don't know, whatever they were talking about their career, theirs just felt the most interesting to me.
And the other thing is, I do think each of them has their own very clear perspective. They're not all samey. You are listening to 7 people, and there's a lot of overlap in what they think about certain situations, but each of them has a very different outlook on their career and what has happened, and different eras were different struggles for different people. And I do think that was very interesting, because it's a lot of times with K-pop groups, you sort of think of them as a little monolith. That they all but they're very different people, and I think you get a clear understanding of each of them. So should we go through, start from the beginning and go from there?
Shall go through.
So we've tabbed this book to hell and back.
Well, you two have. I just kind of read it, but...
So the first tab I have is just something I, 1, didn't know, and 2, fits very well for this podcast. My first tab is that Suga says that he joined Big Hit Entertainment because he liked Bang PD. Totally normal.
Right.
He really likes the Tiara song the first time. 1, Bang PD wrote a Tiara song, and 2, Suga likes Tiara.
Yeah, that is wild, man.
Those are things, those are thoughts. That's just a thing I wanted to point out, especially for us.
Yep. My first tab in the book is something a little bit less important, but I think was an absolutely wild thing to say. But it was, who's this? I think Jin talking about Suga, about how he would just eat to live, and he would eat chicken breast blended with grape juice and a banana.
Suga
and
had
I'm just
some
I'm sorry, you're doing what now?
Yeah, no,
it's
that's not
giving
food,
boy
sir.
dinner.
That's not
what
food.
on earth
It's
are
giving
you
boy
doing?
dinner.
Yeah, that's girl dinner. It's
but
girl dinner.
man edition.
Oh my god. Oh my
Girl
god.
dinner doesn't mean you put it in a blender, though.
See, that's why I said it's boy dinner. Boy
girl
dinner
is all of boy dinner is
Boy dinner.
that is I need help dinner. That is, you need
I
help,
mean,
sir.
I
dinner.
don't understand why you wouldn't just eat those separate. Why would you put them in a blender? Like,
Another thing I want to point out, and this just begins
I don't know how
I think
you
it
would
happens
drink
in
that,
between
honestly.
are these two tabs, which is that one, they're giving sort of a context for Big Hit Entertainment, and they say, Big Hit had a string of successful acts like 8, J Lim, 2 a.m. No mention of Glam. And then we get the mention that
Glam's failure.
they call Glam a costly failure. They talk about how where is it?
If not for Glam's failure, is on
Yeah.
page 55. And we don't really get the full explanation of what happened to Glam, but we do mention that Glam was a failure. And how
Yeah.
that was taking away a lot of the resources that Big Hit
Yeah.
had left.
Oh,
for
at some
debuting
point they
BTS.
talk about how but unfortunately Glam never caught on in popularity, and Big Hit Entertainment was saddled with a sizable financial
because it does
burden.
cost money.
Oof. But also to call a group, that's the nicest way to call them an absolute failure, is to say they cost us a sizable financial. They say nothing positive.
Well, to be
about
fair,
Glam at any point in
there
this
wasn't
book.
really much
Not
to
that this
say
is a
about
book
anything about the
Glam.
group-wise positive. And also, then you gotta throw in the member
at some
that decided
point,
to
they
blackmail,
do also say,
fucking... They don't mention
not
it, but,
gonna mention
you
that,
know, if
but
you know, you know.
they're never going to. But the other thing we actually did learn is also because of Glam, partially because of Glam, and because of the financial burden of Glam, once they had made BTS, they had to let go of 20 trainees. Now, here is the thing. Usually, if you let go of a bunch of trainees, they appear in other places, and it's like, well, I could have been a member of BTS. I've never seen any of those boys anywhere.
I know.
Those are trainees.
One of them in particular I know was
I know
for sure.
some of them.
And he...
Yes.
I know 2 of them, or 2 or 3 of them ended up in K&K.
But,
They
like, that's
mentioned
the
that
point.
before.
It's either some random soloist situation or, like...
There's 20 of them somewhere. Also, I want to point out that Jungkook really seems like an innocent child when he starts out all this, considering that he talks about how he didn't know he wanted to be a singer. We go from, like, this truly, like, heart-wrenching, like, and then Suga went through so much to be a singer, and then we got Jungkook out here being like, sports, art, music, I was pretty good at everything, man. I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I'm like,
Jack of all trades, I
then you
guess.
remember he's
Nicer.
13.
But also, he
Must
was, like,
be
12 or
nice.
13?
Also,
yeah.
then you remember he's, like, 12.
He's a child, yeah.
Yeah, he's 12 at this point, so you're like, well, fuck. Must be nice, sir.
Mm-hmm. I also really like the comparison of RM to Jack Black in the School of Rock. Like, that's a direct comparison the author made.
There's some fun metaphors.
I just like that
in
they
this book.
put out School
Weird.
of Rock, though, because I'm like, oh, School of Rock.
It was one of the first, like, references that was thrown in there, and it was really confusing why that was the one that they decided
But it sounds
to
like
put.
him and Suga in particular became the teachers, which is cute. Which makes sense.
Yeah. RM and J-Hope were essentially leading, they would said, like, little, like,
even though at
hip-hop
some point,
practice,
they also,
like, things in the door.
Even though at some point in this, J-Hope also talks about how he's like, I had no idea how to rap.
No, yeah,
like
he was
anything.
definitely idol, quote-unquote
here.
idol top, but also by, like, his future, like, teammates, he was taught how to rap.
God, the amount of tabs on here that are just Glam was a failure.
A lot of
really out
they
here
really were like,
There's
yeah,
a lot
Glam
of
really
them.
fucked it over.
Partially, I think that tells me that they wanted to emphasize, like, hey, we didn't have it easily and fabulous. We actually did struggle a little bit.
But also, I think they want to distance themselves from Glam. They're like, look, we have to mention Glam. People are going to ask questions about Glam. We need to, like, make it known that Glam is not a thing.
But I think they also probably want to
talk
emphasize,
about.
too, that, like, Big Hit didn't have it necessarily easy. They actually did have a failure of a group. They didn't, like, they didn't just whip their fingers, create BTS, and then all of a sudden, whoop-de-doo-dah, you know? Yeah.
Oh, so we get to the point where BTS is finally... Do you have any more pre-debut stuff, Kayla?
My next thing is when they win Best New Artist at the Mamas.
Oh, no, mine is not. We talk about how... So, BTS debuts, correct? And then we go into the point of no return where they talk about how BTS was just slammed in between two juggernaut groups because they debuted in
Oh, yeah.
2013. And in 2012, you get EXO. And then in 2013, you get...
2014.
In 2013, you get BTS. And then in 2014, you get Winner. A group definitely on par with the other two. Totally throughout that whole history.
I mean, hell, they even mentioned about BTS talking about Big Hit. I mean, sorry, Big Bang.
That's a different part.
Big.
But I'm talking specifically about when they're giving context about the idol industry in this era. They're talking about, like, EXO came out and they were a massive success. Also, did not think that in this book we were going to get a mention of Win, who is next.
We talk a lot about Winner and Icon in this book, surprisingly.
Surprisingly more than you talk about EXO, which I thought we were going to talk more about EXO, to be honest. But really, there's...
But I guess Winner was, I mean, that was, they were the YG group, they had a whole survival show, that they were expected to be huge, and I think they were at their debut, yes, but they are nowhere close to being on the level that Icon and BTS are, partially because YG did a bad job, but, you know, besides that, they were expected to be that, but in retrospect, looking at that fact, it's like, one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, in retrospect, looking at people comparing, you know, EXO and BTS, okay. Winner being thrown into that mix, it feels like there's, like, one group that didn't maybe quite live up to... And I'm not saying that this book is shading Winner.
I think they probably wanted to highlight I think they just wanted to highlight another big company.
I know, at the time, but dear God, is it funny just in retrospect.
Because I think it's better for them to highlight Winner than it is, because the other group they would have thrown in there was, like, GOT7. Like, that seems also, like, a wrong decision to bring into the conversation.
Yeah, it does not
Yeah, to be
work.
fair, at that time, Winner and EXO probably would have been the more bigger paid attention to groups.
Oh, absolutely.
Too.
Absolutely.
So, like, to be
but
fair,
I'm just saying that, like, looking back on it, Winner does not necessarily live up to... I mean, any YG group going forward does not necessarily live... Other than Blackpink, does not necessarily live up to the potential that is thrust upon them from their pre-debut phase.
Of their adult,
True.
Yeah, no group at all, including... And by that, I mean all three of the boy groups didn't. Mm-hmm. Yeah, then we get to them talking about how...
I just tabbed every time we name dropped another K-pop group. So
I got a bunch of those.
There's
a lot in that one section.
Yeah, in the Mamas, when they swept Best New Artist Awards at all the major Korean awards, they talk about how SHINee was the one who won Artist of the Year, and then it's like, who didn't know SHINee? And everyone knew Beast and Infinite, but we were just Bulletproof Vest guys for a while.
I love that. Infinite being mentioned.
Infinite being mentioned in this book is also insane to me. That Infinite
that's
name
great.
But
it's true. That was right around Infinite's peak. I feel like
and
too. So
Beast
like,
were like in SHINee, the three of them.
And Beast, yeah.
Wild. I also get a little bit before that, them just talking about how it's like, yeah, we had no friends. We didn't all bounce around companies.
They all started at Big Hit and then debuted there, and like that was.
And they're like, oh, so they would go to music shows and be backstage, and everybody would be talking, and they're like, how the hell do they know each other? And it's like, because they all trained together. They all bounced around companies, and they just didn't know anybody and just stuck to themselves. And I'm like, that's
kind of sad.
No wonder. Yeah, that's actually quite sad. And I'm like, no wonder BTS. No wonder BTS still does not know how to really interact with the younger.
Because they didn't have anyone else to be friends with.
They didn't.
I mean, they eventually made some friends, but
eventually, but it wasn't as. Eventually, they didn't have anybody to mentor them. Mm-hmm. No. I think the next thing I have is the one person that they mention in this book by name disrespected them.
Oh, yes.
So they go very in depth about the Be Free situation, which I was surprised they were
They even mentioned about they didn't say the YouTube channel, but they were like, it's spread on YouTube,
it's one of the few
which is funny.
And I think this is where I want to talk about, like, all the QR codes I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
They QR code this book because, like, so much of the things that they're talking about in this book are visual things you can look up.
And so if they reference an interview or a music or an album, there's just a QR code to that in the book. And honestly, that's a really fun thing to have.
Yeah.
When we read the description of the book, and they were like, yeah, and over 300 QR codes, and we're just like, why the fuck is that in there? Like, what's that about? And it seems like a really weird thing to put in a book, but it's actually very fun.
Because I was expecting them to weirdly be QR coding every one of their songs, and it's like, no, it's like performances, it's interviews, it's things that are usable.
Yes.
They don't QR code this because I think that might put them in hot water.
Yes.
but it's fine. So Be Free, for people that don't remember, because this was like 10 years ago at this point, Be Free and Suga and RM
Be Free's still around.
He's around.
He's still around.
Like,
he's a rapper.
He's fine.
For
He's
those
a rapper.
who aren't aware.
They were talking about rap, and he
yeah.
said some shit. He said some shit. They do not actually say the shit he said, because I do not think
he basically
they are allowed to.
criticized RM and Suga, apparently without ever listening to
No,
their
they
work.
do say that he does. He admitted to never listening to
Yeah.
them. And also apparently, and this is just from my memory, was this the one where they were? Was this the interview also where he was also slightly homophobic to them?
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yes.
but that's not shocking from a
That
lot
is
of
not shocking,
Korean
but
men,
also
honestly.
not a good thing to be. Just saying,
It's not at all.
Not a good
It's
thing.
It's absolutely not a good thing to be, but like I'm not surprised.
No, but also
especially
was
with the
slightly
current crew he's
homophobic.
with and the type of music and stuff that crew has allegedly put out, that's kind of not nice about
So
certain
they
things.
talk about how that actually affected them quite, and they talk about it for more than I thought they would. It was a surprisingly amount of time that they talked about it. And they were just essentially like, no, this guy is a dick. Not in those words, but implied. This guy's a dick, which I agree with in this situation, was a dick.
He's been also, there's by the way, not mentioned in this book, but there's a whole ass situation where he basically really destroyed ties with a now defunct hip-hop label. That was great, but like he destroyed ties severely due to like alleged financial claims and all that jazz. So like he's a big time dick, even amongst other other popular hip hop artists. He's a big time dick. Yeah,
but
yeah,
overall,
he's talented, but like he just constantly. It's like Azealia Banks almost. It's kind of like Azealia Banks, except not as wackadoo controversial, but still pretty bad.
And you know what?
If you want to, yeah,
there's talented people all over this world. If you're a dick, get out of my face.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that happens. It goes on to then just talk about how like the greater hip hop community was in this era.
Mm-hmm.
There was a much more stark divide of I mean, this is sort of the era. This is 2013. This is only the beginnings of actual good idol rap. Because previously you're dealing with some questionable idol rap.
So like I which is where I understand the local hip hop community there being a little bit like about idol rappers in general. Like
sure.
I kind of get it.
But also, I don't necessarily think Be Free was ever thinking that insulting these two Nugu K-pop boy group rappers was eventually going to get him called out by name in a New York Times best-selling book translated into over like 10
definitely
languages.
did not think that.
Which you know.
Absolutely did not
But
think
also,
that.
keep that in mind before you talk shit, maybe. Maybe one day you
like,
will
who
get
knows?
called out in a New York Times best-selling book that's going to eventually just be talked about way more than you are.
It's also, we skipped over
Yeah.
this in the pre-debut portion of BTS's career, but it does talk a lot about how RM, J-Hope, and Suga were anticipating to debut as a hip-hop only trio.
Yes.
And then at some
This
point,
also
Big Hit
begins
made the pivot into making them like
an actual boy
a
group.
dance group, but I forget the term they use for it, but it's very in the way of like very intense but like very sharp synchronized style choreography, because that's very infinite, like
infinite.
Yeah.
yes, because
Yeah.
that's the type of dancing that was really big in K-pop.
That's
back
why they
then.
put infinite in this
That's
book.
why
so
Infinite's
you
name
could
dropped
remember,
multiple
like-
times.
Yep. The other thing with this is that it is very interesting because that is the beginning of Suga just being like, I didn't want to dance. It's not a lie. He didn't want to
And that
dance,
was
and yet
from
here he is.
pre-debut until current. Probably.
He was told you don't have to dance, and yet here he
was
is
lied
in
to.
BTS. In BTS.
I mean, no one said he didn't have to be
No.
the best one.
So when we actually get to starting talk now, from this point, from post debut onward, it really goes by like album after album after album, talking about how they went through it.
Mhm.
They talk a lot about, not a lot, but they do mention some songs by name and talk about the process of writing it.
Mhm.
A song I want to talk about is the song Tomorrow, which I am happy they talked about, because again, cried in my car to that song a lot in college.
Listen to that one a lot, I'll tell you that much.
I cried
oh, God.
so hard
that got me
alone
through,
in my car to that song.
Yep.
It's
Oh,
a core
yeah.
memory. Thank you for
It's
talking about it, Suga. Thank you.
Big core
Validation.
memory.
Validation.
big core memory in my 12th grade year. So, like, yeah.
I have danger stuff as my next tabs in the book around danger era.
Yeah, the danger era is interesting.
The danger era
I've
was
got
it was a lot in
the
this.
God quote in here. That's the next thing I have tabbed.
Do I have when was the Bobby thing before or after the God quote?
I think it's after, because I feel like I would have tabbed to the Bobby.
Yeah, the Bobby thing happened right
2014,
before
so yeah, that
the
would've been
mamas.
Yeah, that would have been, but the book also doesn't always
It
go
doesn't,
in
it's
like
not fully chronological.
it's not fully
yeah.
in chronology.
Yeah, so that had to be 2014.
But I'm saying the book isn't necessarily in chronology because they go back and forth on that danger era a lot.
They do.
That danger era is like the
era,
most...
yeah, we go back and forth between it quite a bit, yeah.
Because also then the American Hustle Life thing happens too.
Yeah, I forgot. They also they don't
no.
talk about that in depth, but they do talk about it.
Because here's the thing, I have one that's tabbed around the mamas. Because they talk about danger and they talk about how like here's the thing. They talk about a bunch of the danger stuff in like various orders. They also talk about here's one. Because I'm trying to figure out the quotes where people are like, these are the bullying quotes.
Right.
I tried. One I found is on page 96. They said that like there were candidates for first V's talking about it. And it's like they're talking about how they would say hello in meet and greets and everybody would just ignore them as they pass or mock them. And I'm like trying to figure out, this is danger era. No one talks about this quote because that would have been all like early 3rd gen, 2nd gen idols.
Right.
Somehow this is more of a direct quote than what later people are talking about where they bring up NCT Dream.
It's so confusing because the quotes are so vague and I don't think they're meant to be incriminating at all. And it's literally like 3 sentences of this entire book to begin with. So it's like people really just took that and ran, and then people who haven't even read the book are going out here and saying like, that's really sketchy that they would even say that to begin with. And I'm like, it's not meant to be incriminating. It's not meant for people to go on a witch hunt. It's literally 2 sentences that are incredibly vague.
And also, at the same time, these sentences can be... Sure, a lot of it can be about other artists. It can also be about staff.
Yeah.
It can also be about fans in some cases, especially the later ones can be about fans. Like, just saying that it could be about a lot of people. Also, I want to put out another, before we get to the God quote, I like this other Suga quote that, Suga described their disappointment at Dark and Wild of, we suffered so much for it. So what? Like, damn, Suga.
Yep.
Suga was going through a time in these early times.
I just want this one dark and wild danger quote from Suga it's just a lot.
Before we get to that one, I want to point out that they do mention Jokwon's appearance on We Got Married by name, and I'm like, why?
And I'm like, yeah, that you mention?
Why not?
Like, did we have to bring We Got Married into the book? Like,
apparently We Got Married needs to be immortalized in the BTS book. But yes, I think now we get to the God quote, which is very upsetting. So, apparently, the hardest album ever to be made by BTS is Dark and Wild. This album sounded like hell.
It feels like it absolutely crushed them. Like, it was absolutely defeating for them to do this album.
I want to read the full quote about Suga.
Yeah.
Because this is a long quote, but dear God, it sounds like this was hell. For Danger, we were changing the choreography until just before we shot the music video. We'd rehearse the dance, and then we had a bit of time. We'd sleep for about 10 minutes and then go back to shooting the music video. And I began to feel resentful. Like, I thought there was a God, but at this point, don't we deserve a little something from God? Like, at least a hey guys, you guys have worked really hard. That kind of acknowledgement. Sir, are you okay?
Just that don't we deserve a little something from God was like truly, oh my God, this man is like spiraling.
This man's not having...
He's not
no one else gets to the point of, is there a God?
Right.
But no one else sounds like they're having fun. Because also at the same time as Dark and Wild is the same time as American Hustle Life.
Yes.
Which is also a time... They look like they actually had fun doing it, but it was...
They do say that they had a fun time shooting it, but it does feel like they are being, like, worked every second of the day during that era.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're talking about how, like, American Hustle Life began airing in July, and then Dark and Wild was released in August. And then, also in the summer of 2014, This is what I love the way this book transitions sometime, because they talk of that and then it's like, and then in the summer 2014 is when Show Me the Money 3 happened, and my first thought is, what?
And I'm like, what
Why
does
is
this have
that
to do?
being
And then
brought
we bring up this whole thing.
And then we get to something that I did not remember until this book brought it up happened.
See, I remembered it, but I forgot that BTS was a part of it. I remembered that Ravi was a part of it, of VIX, but I did not remember that BTS was more involved in it than him.
And I forgot about this part. So they begin talking about giving a lot, before they get into what happened, they give a lot of context as to who is Bobby?
Who's Bobby? And why is he here?
Okay, hi Bob. Like, boy group of member of Icon, was on Win, Who Is Next, was on Show Me the Money 3, won Show Me the Money 3. Like, okay, go on. And then it's like, and then he did a diss track, and I'm like, I think because Bobby is like a nice person with with a fan base, they are far more cordial to Bobby than they are to Be Free, because they give so much context for, one, who Bobby is, and two, why this is fine. Because Bobby makes a diss track. They give so much context, which I think is necessary, because people
if they did it, I mean, that would have been defamation for sure. Like, if they
that would have been God, Bobby would have had
for the amount of case. They go into Bobby in this book, like, they had to write it very carefully.
Like 2 full pages.
Wonder if Bobby's happy about
Bobby.
the free promotion.
Damn,
like,
honestly, good for Bobby.
I was not expecting Bobby to be in this book as much as he was.
I was not expecting them to.
I completely missed him to actually doing a diss at BTS, but I'm not surprised given he was
that he called out
Money.
RM specifically. Like, I did not remember that at all. I knew he did an idol rapper diss, but that was it.
Another thing, I absolutely love how much of they get into, like, and he was also on Epic High's Born Hater, which released and also featured Bobby and Minnow, and also Benzino and Verbal Jinx, and I'm like, why are we getting so much context for Born Hater? Something that has nothing to do with this situation. But sure.
Yes.
Give us the entire rundown
of who
is in the
I
mean,
it's
most likely it's probably just to prove of, like, okay, hey, look,
it's
view
just,
him as a legitimate
it's just
rapper.
For, like, I think it's for more names. It's very funny. Them like, why do I need to know who else is in Born Hater? But no, at some point
we also have to like tiptoe around the fact that, like, BI is not an icon, so the wording of it is like BI and Bobby, who will go on will later debut in the group Icon or whatever. They cannot just call them, like,
and also
members
I don't think
of Icon.
like, in this book they don't want to get into and Bobby, member of Icon, and also BI former member of Icon, because at that point it's like, do I have to explain? Like, we're getting into tangents.
Yeah, no, they don't want to explain.
At some point that's just getting into tangents that have nothing to do with this book.
Yes.
I do want to see this author write a full K-pop history, though, because it would be amazing.
I would love it, because I feel like this person is definitely qualified. Like, I really,
it's amazing.
Really think the author did such a good job
absolutely
with this book.
Qualified to do that. I mean, he went super in depth in this book.
Also, it is a very, like, the thing with this is that, like, it's one of the few topics that, like, I think you could write a book on it, and it would be mostly, I mean, if you give it enough pages, you could write a pretty comprehensive history of it, which is fine. So then we get into the fun struggles of Do I Respond? Because that apparently comes out like 3 days before the Mamas. And it's the same Mama, it's the very famous Mamas where BTS and Block B, another group that just gets casually talked about a bunch.
I mean, they kind of have to if they're doing a performance together.
But I'm just saying, they mentioned Block B a lot.
Oh, this happened. The distract came out one day.
Well, I think it's also because
RM
RM knew Zico prior, so it's kind of like.
But they don't mention that. They just talk about how just like Bobby is a lot of Zico. They don't talk Zico from Block B. Yeah, no. Apparently, they're already all in Hong Kong at the Mamas when this diss track comes out, and it's like what do we do? What do we do?
Like, do I respond to it? Like, what do I
But also, I have 1 day to respond.
Yeah, I've got 1 day to fix my lyrics and, like, figure out what
And
to
he
do.
does it during the performance.
Yeah, I forgot
he does his solo first, and then I think Zico does Tough Cookie.
He does.
RM does his diss song, and then I think they go into Danger,
They
and then
do.
they go into
Her.
her, and then before that there's the other
There's a, like,
performances
a
that I was
dance
just like,
battle.
oh my
There's the
god,
dance
I love that we're
performance. Yeah,
getting
there's
an
the
in-depth
dance
discussion about this performance. I literally love this mama performance.
It's a
so
good
This is
fucking
the
much.
one spot in the
I
book
love
where I
it.
did use the QR code to go watch this performance because
Yeah,
it's
it
a
was a
really
good
good mama
performance.
performance.
Yeah, not that
I
not that
love
we
this.
hadn't
This
seen
was
it, just
everything
very
to me.
good.
This whole performance was everything to me back in the day because I was just like, this is so fucking cool. I'm here for it. It was so much fun. And then of course all of them rapping and singing to Let's Get It Started. So at the
Also,
end, I'm just like,
you know, this is a weird tangent. Tough Cookie is Zico's worst song.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
not
I think it was his first solo
I know.
release. So like
Just
he's
saying,
improved since
not
then.
it's
But
his
yeah,
worst one. Just saying.
yeah, that's fair.
Opinions.
That's fair.
Also, the Confederate flag in the music video questionable.
Also, yeah, that's also
Yeah.
a choice.
By questionable, I mean terrible.
But yeah. Also, the Jimin talking about ripping up his shirt.
He was very nervous.
Loved it.
Oh, yes.
Loved it. But I had to throw that out there. But yeah.
Oh, I love the idea that they do have to mention War of Hormone in this.
They do.
They do not. They go on to later talk about like some different things they've had to reflect on because at the time that War of Hormone came out, no one saw an issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fun. Love the tiptoeing. There's sometimes you gotta
Mhm.
tiptoe. What else I got in here? What's your next one?
So mine is like there is a conversation I want to have about it because it's about Suga again, and because I have a lot of his quotes tabbed here.
I also have a lot of Suga quotes because I'm worried about him.
I know.
He's emo. Not gonna lie.
No, he might be depressed, and I hope he has a very
That
good
too.
therapist.
So the thing that I
That
really
too.
wanted to talk about because I think it's a thing that just doesn't get talked about a lot is that. So I have this quote from Suga where he's talking about the like the fans and everything that says, "If you remove the fans from my life as an idol, I'm a really pathetic person. I'm just nothing.
Oh, yeah.
I always feel so guilty towards the fan responsibility. I think I have to take responsibility. I think that's one of the driving forces that moves me. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I could have done this work. I need to take responsibility, perform, and satisfy those people."
Yeah.
That was a big part.
Yeah.
And the
this
thing
poor
I
man.
wanted to talk about is that because like we are fans and like that's the perspective that we have with idols is like we always talk about the like parasocial relationship that fans often have
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
within idols. We don't often talk about that the idols also have a parasocial relationship with the fans
Backwards,
as well.
yes.
Like that also
yeah.
And I
goes
think
the other way.
I think especially a group like BTS,
Mm-hmm.
where like one K-pop has a very intense parasocial relationship anyway. Like you're looking at a
K-pop
fan of that. Like, the
specifically
parasocial
is set
relationships
up
are
that way.
in. Yeah,
Especially when
Aesthetically it is.
things are like fan meets and everything like that. Like
Yeah.
it's really like it's parasocial like on a really different level than a lot of other things
And
are.
especially to the point with BTS is that there is like I'm gonna compare, and I hope I come across correctly with the way I'm saying this, is that like in a way, especially with the rise of BTS, like there is some like plausible deniability of like how much the fans quote unquote made you. Because it's like, well, I had a very popular song, like it's not the diehards or whatever, it's just like my talent would have gotten me anywhere. In a group like BTS, I can only imagine this weird parasocial relationship that you have with your fans where it's like, no, they kind of, like, you're reaching beyond what has ever been deemed possible. The fans are what broke you through to skyrocketing.
No, yeah, they significantly
to a
helped with
point
that.
like no
Significantly
other
helped.
group had gotten to, at least in the K-pop community. Like, that's gotta be insane.
and it's,
Especially when the fact that literally, unlike a lot of artists where like you'll see that things are credited to their talent or whatever, you look at the way a lot of media talks about BTS and everything is credited to their fans.
Mhm.
Their success,
Everything, yeah.
their monetarily, their cultural impact, everything is credited to their fans.
And I think that's
And that does
there's-
probably add to his feeling of when he says,
Oh, yeah,
I feel
he-
pathetic. Like, I can only imagine that, and that kind of sad to me.
This is a thing that I feel it's annoying because I've seen a lot of people, because of how large the BTS fandom is and how people often find them very annoying. People a lot of the times will put a blame on BTS for encouraging like toxic fan behavior
Mhm.
because they say like, oh, they'll just say stuff and they're just clearly doing it as a way to manipulate their fans. But Suga clearly is saying, like, he ties, like, a lot of his self-worth to the fact that he has fans that, like, adore him so much and care about him. So it's like,
I mean,
can you really...
but also in this situation, it's so obvious too. Like, it's a very big visual representation to them of like, okay, we got super far because of a lot of these guys. Like, these are the guys we know for sure. We're not blind. We know for sure these guys are basically making us as wealthy as we fucking are right now.
But
so it's
the
kind of
other
like, I
thing
think
with
they feel like very in debt to that.
And that's
as well,
the thing of like, that is also this is why I hope Suga has a really good therapist.
I know.
Because that's
I hope
much
they all
like
do,
how,
frankly.
but
I, hope
I
they
think
all
specifically
do.
the way
Suga
Suga writes
especially.
in this book.
Yeah.
I'm just like, much like how a parasocial relationship from a fan's perspective isn't healthy, that's also not healthy for him. His
really
whole self-worth, like,
yeah.
the man is writing these songs, he's doing all of this stuff, and the fact that his entire self-worth is tied to some people on the internet, that's also not good for him. Like, I don't know. I hope he's okay, man.
And it's clearly the way that idols view fans is in a different way than the way that fans have to view idols, because they have to view it as like fans as like a general, like, it's like a more like as a concept. Like it's like not as individual for them because they clearly can't know every single one of their fans, and so all they can really do is trust in this like general like conglomerate of fans that they have. And I think because of that, and I feel like that's genuine, like that's usually never in a place like where that's coming from, like in a way that's trying to manipulate people in any way. But I think where the more toxic fan behavior probably comes in is when fans are taking that and they're hearing this stuff for idols and they're not thinking of it in the way like they're thanking the fans as a whole. They're thanking like me specifically, and then that's where I think it is more of an issue.
Again, I think that this whole toxicity situation is just bad for everyone involved. Every artist, fan, everyone is just in a very bad position when you're dealing with like very intense parasocial relationships. And I do think that like, we're talking specifically about Suga, but I would not be surprised if this is a sentiment just
like a lot of K-pop
all these
idols
feel,
have,
especially the very popular ones, especially like your like top tier idols, which are like that feels.
And if you think about it, that's a much smaller circle to like have a chance to talk to other people about that sort of stuff and how they feel. It's something that
honestly,
a lot of people cannot relate to. A very small group can only
because
relate to
that's not an easy thing to say. Hi, I'm the multimillionaire celebrity Suga of BTS, and I have like very bad self-esteem issues. Which honestly, I would say Suga by and large is the most vulnerable person in this book, and I don't know if it's just that the other ones don't, and not that they have to be, because at no point am I at all owed their own personal issues being played out in a book. Absolutely not. Or maybe they just have like less. You know, at no point do I say that they have to put all this out on the page, but Suga very clearly is just very willing and very open.
I feel like Suga probably just feels more comfortable speaking about it publicly because a lot of the sentiments that he's saying in this book, I feel like are also really reflected in his solo music as well. Like, I'm hearing all the stuff he's saying, and it's like, it's not that surprising that he has this mindset because it definitely comes across in his music for sure that he's struggled with stuff like this before.
It's very much. Yeah.
So the next thing I have is it's their controversy in Most Beautiful Moment in Life, part 2.
Yes.
Because they talk about how this is sort of where they talk about their misogyny controversy, and very clearly talk about just essentially just being like, we're like, oh, this is not a good thing that we've done. They apologize. I like the idea that they explain but don't necessarily give excuses. And I don't know if anything was cut or anything, but like, they're just like, looking back, like, I needed to. It's weird the way they phrase it of like, looking back, I needed to go through this controversy to grow as a person. And I'm like, okay. That's one way of putting it, but I mean... Also, I love this thing that they put in here, which is gender sensitivity training is now obligatory for all HYBE artists before they can debut.
Honestly,
great.
Important.
Thank you.
Honestly, important.
Important. Necessary.
Dope.
Love that. So I guess misogyny is dead.
Apparently.
At Hybe, apparently,
Hybe,
it's
apparently.
dead.
I mean,
At Hybe, apparently.
hey, I'll give it this. Unlike some other companies, when
No.
a Hybe group goes through a scandal, usually the next couple of groups don't go through that same scandal, at least after debut.
Yeah.
Except for that one trainee A kid that had that bad misogyny scandal, but that was like before he was even a trainee.
And he might have, like, been the reason for the trainee A downfall, for all we know.
Maybe. Oh no, he was out before the trainee A downfall. I think they took him out.
But the fact that he was their main, like, music producer, I
Yeah.
think is what kind of destroyed that group.
Wait,
Yeah,
isn't that the
if
one
they-
that's
if they-
debuting
if-
under B.I.'s company?
Yes.
That's Leo. I didn't
Yeah.
even. I just now processed
Yeah.
that those are the same people.
Small world, right?
Small world.
Small
Speaking
world.
Of B.I.
Mhm.
Speaking of BI. But no, but like, you know, if anything, I also see this as kind of a reflection of like,
Yeah.
surprise, surprise, people, you know, teenage to like close to
boys are
adult
dumb,
boys,
man.
not in Korea, not really fully understanding gender stuff, but also being
But
removed
also,
kind of from
I
that in an
think
insulated world.
Teenagers don't fully understand gender stuff generally because again,
Yeah.
No.
they
You're
have
a-
an.
You're
I
a
even
young
think,
kid. It's like, you
even-
don't really know
and
what's
this is
going
the
on
thing.
there.
And this is the thing. I even think
like edgy
teenage
jokes are like
girls-
part of the humor.
even
Like
teen-
shitty, edgy jokes
yeah,
are part
even
of humor.
teenage
Yeah.
girls do it because they have yet to
Oh, yeah.
experience. I mean, with exceptions of like teenage girls don't really start like being a thing about sexism and all that stuff until they've experienced it because you know kids don't experience that. Like you know what I mean? It's you gotta grow. You gotta go through some shit.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I want to point out that apparently this is off of the serious stuff. Fire is Jin's favorite song?
Fun.
Okay.
Good
That's
choice.
funny.
It was
Okay.
not what I would
Was not
expected from
expecting
Jin,
that.
but you know,
You know,
Sure.
hey, they must get a favorite.
I mean, everyone has a favorite. Didn't think it was
would be fire.
Didn't think it would be fire.
I also didn't think Danger was gonna be the one that really destroyed them.
that really broke them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I love that they don't really talk about specific fights. They talk only about one fight they ever had,
But
which
it's
is
already
the fact
pretty
that
publicly.
the very
known.
public fight already.
Yeah.
But also, I love that V just talks about filming Hwarang, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
were in a
forgot
drama.
about he was in Hwarang during a lot of
Good
this.
for him.
Yeah, he did one drama.
He did one.
So
With
far.
what time do they have to do more?
True.
When? He did one drama. He's like, yeah, good, cool. He made a lot of friends on there, which I'm happy for him. He made a lot of very actor friends, which is very sweet of him.
Very cute.
But no, the fight is very specifically one about dumplings and about between V and Jimin
Yeah.
and
The
food, and I'm like,
dumpling
that's
fight,
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I do like that they do, because again, I don't know if they want to air all of their dirty laundry out in a book. They do talk about the fact that there have been more fights.
Mhm. I mean,
But
I feel
again,
like that's just to
don't
be
need to.
that's just to be
That
expected.
is to be
Like
expected.
that you're gonna have fights when tensions are high and everyone is stressed. Like,
but also at
that's
the same time, most groups will never admit that they've had fights.
Yeah.
Never.
I mean, the only one that I know that I think has gone super into detail has been
Super
like
Ju- I was
Super
gonna say
Junior
Super Junior,
about
but
yeah,
their
they
Super,
all-
but
fights.
also
they literally
Super
got into
Junior
a
are
fist fight.
crazy. Yeah. Super Junior are crazy people. What else is...
My
what's
next
the
one
thing
is
I
not
tabbed?
until Wings. Blood, Sweat, and
Oh,
Tears
I
music video.
have Wings.
I have this one paragraph that I just wanted to say as a quick thing, because it's talking about how the Blood, Sweat, and Tears music video
Yes.
is going from more of a analysis and personal interpretation rather than like a direct
Clear,
secret message
yeah.
like I need you and run we're doing. And I would just like to remind people that, that's the intention for some things. Not everything needs to have very specific, like,
Not everything
correct
is lore.
Not everything has to be lore.
Yeah. But I kind
The
of
thing
liked
is
how they
symbolism.
just admitted to in the book. They're just like, yeah, we're trying this whole storyline lore thing.
Yeah, and
Oh,
it's
no,
like
they very
I
much
mean,
do that.
the Most Beautiful Moment in Life era was definitely fully lore based, and Blood, Sweat, and
Lore-based.
Tears is very much
Yeah.
like people think there's lore there, but it's very much I think just meant to be pretty and more like just like general metaphors than it is meant to have a specific like storyline
it's
they're
gorgeous.
hitting towards, and like that's
I
fine.
fucking love that
We
music
don't need to
video.
have lore
oh
and
my God, I
everything,
love that
But
music
like,
video.
if you tell me that music video, even when it came out, that music video is concrete lore, I'd be like, you're insane and you're on drugs. That music video is
Pretty much.
clearly symbolic in every way.
Yeah.
including the weird demonic imagery at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part. Love that. The next one I have is Suga talking about his mixtape,
Oh, yes.
which is another concerning quote.
Oh, God. Another concerning Suga quote. What's my next?
Oh, no, it's when he was... no, it's First Love. Sorry, it's still Wings.
Oh, yeah. I think that's also the next one I have,
Yeah,
too.
no, First Love.
So when he's
First
talking
Love's
about
very
First
heavy.
Love, and also So Far Away from his mixtape, his song together, I'm just gonna read this quote of, like, to be honest, what I thought when I was working on these was, I don't want to do music. I don't like music after all. I dislike music. I was doing this because music was all I knew, and I never really thought I didn't want to do it. You okay, sir?
He's not okay.
Yeah, the quarter
He's
life
going
crisis. It
through a
happens, man.
life. Should your quarter life crisis stretch for like your entire an entire 6 years?
What it sounds like to me though is that he was just doing music constantly so much he didn't really probably know who he was
that's a
outside
thing
of
to
that.
admit
Is what
in a
I'm
book.
thinking.
That's a thing
Yeah.
to admit in a novel. To
Well, it's similar to like sports people, honestly. It's similar to sports people.
The thing
in a
with
way.
Suga is that there's no levity in here for Suga. I feel
There's
like
nothing.
I'm like, Suga, were you happy
I
at
think the
all
guy's
in the
just
last
very
6
blunt.
years?
I think he was just
Are you
very
okay?
blunt. That's
But
the
there's
thing.
no levity. Even at the end, I don't know if there's levity.
To continue that
I hope-
quote, he says, not even a page later, it's like the point where I started calling music work.
Oh,
So how could I possibly approach it casually, you know? That was when I consciously started thinking of it as work. So I thought I really hated music for a while. I didn't listen to a lot of it, but at the same time, I didn't want my musical spectrum to narrow down, so I'd listen to a whole bunch of it at once. Like, he is going through
I love
such a rough
clocking
time.
in for my music listening job and then clocking
Right, it's like,
out.
I hate music, but if I stop, I'll be bad at my job, so I can't. It's, like, terrible.
I mean,
oh my
the
god.
next paragraph after the I dislike music is the emotional drain was just too much. Once my emotions would drop down all the way into the pits, and then suddenly they'd spur upwards like crazy. I'm like,
Right.
are you okay? Like, that's... I really hope he is a good therapist.
This is another thing I wanted to mention because people think that the Wings era is like the cutoff for the good BTS music for a lot of people, where post Wings era people think their music spiraled, and
Yeah.
it's just like clearly
Reading
Suga
about the
started
making of
hating
all of those-
music now.
Yeah.
And so, like, I
mean-
can imagine that had to take some type of a toll on him
Yeah.
and the music he was creating after that point in time.
Yeah. Also, looking at the, because everyone talks about, like, really from Dark and Wild through to Wings as like golden BTS era, reading about the making of those albums sounded like torture
Yes.
to everyone involved. Like, it
seemingly-
Yeah.
sounded like it
sounds
was.
Well, I think there's multiple factors.
There's a
to that.
lot
I
of
think it's
factors
just the
to
pressure
it, but
to
oh my
perform
god,
well.
they sound like they started like.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, Suga's words in particular, like, remind me of kind of what it seems like a lot of, you know, creative people who naturally, as a hobby, when they were younger, did this certain thing, and then when they eventually become an adult, and when they choose to work and make that hobby as a job, they kind of lose it becomes almost
I mean,
like
let's be honest,
they
everyone hates
focus
their
on work
job.
so much it becomes the hobby doesn't become as fun anymore, and they lose the fun of it, and then it takes them a while to, if possible, to revigorate themselves. So that's what it sounds like to me, that he had that.
I mean, let's be honest.
vibe,
Everyone
'cause
hates
if you
their
think
job.
about it, he was
Even
working
if music
constantly.
is your job, you can hate
Yeah.
your job.
Yeah.
Everyone hates their job.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think it's a unique conundrum, though, when you're like an artistic like
Right,
person,
because
or
so
like
many
creative.
people expect
It's
you that
very
when you're
interesting.
creative, you're doing it because you love it. So
Because
when
you
you
love it,
stop
not
hating
because
it, the
you-
expectation that you don't like it anymore because it's a job is like, I feel like a lot of people don't understand that if they're not a creative.
Yeah. I mean, even through all of this, I do think
Even for the people who are creative, it's probably feel torn about, because it's like, this is something I used to love.
Right.
Why do I hate
I'm
it
sure
as much? Why
that
is it so
definitely I
monotone?
feel like would be like a huge like personal struggle for anybody.
With Suga, you also have to think about it too, is that this was someone who started off in Daegu, in a random, I wouldn't say a complete random ass city. It's a somewhat notable city. in Korea.
notable city.
But
in
it's
Korea.
not Seoul or Busan, you know what I mean? It's not the big two cities, you know. In a city, you know, it looks like he latched onto music and hip hop to deal with life, because it sounds like his family was kind of poor and stuff like that, from what I've looked into. You know, for him, he started off in hip hop, right? And then, like, over time, has to come to accepting the more pop role and a different trajectory in his music career that he totally did not expect ever to happen. So I could totally see this era, even though they're starting to get a little bit more notable success and feeling more pressure, that him being lost is kind of like, I'm not surprised, because at his heart, he probably feels like still kind of like that rapper, producer, lyrical songwriter, and now he's kind of like this pop artist that dances. And that must be weird too for him. Like at the time, I don't know what he feels about it now, but at the time I could see kind of like that conflict coming up there for him internally.
No, I just think that, like, overall in this, because again, this is also reflections back. Like, these are not at the time interviews. These are just also reflections
That's true,
back.
yeah.
Like, this book was probably interviews from, I would say, maybe, because it ends at it was probably from around the Grammys last year. Like, I would say that's no.
It could have been for a longer period of time, because they had to interview all of them before they started
because
to
it goes up to the Grammys, though. They would have had to be, the latest interviews would have had to have been from around the Grammys.
Yeah.
True, yeah.
And then a year of editing and putting out this, like, a year and a half, probably like a year and a half-ish total. That's not the worst amount of time. I would say probably the interview started, again, I think Grammys last year is like a good benchmark of like when it happened.
Yeah.
I think to just use that, these are also reflections back on like what they're talking about from like 6 years before that. So again,
True.
it's like, I wonder what we'll never know, but like at the time, these are all memories too.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention, and this is something that's very interesting, is that this is something I actually really, really like and respect. There is no information about their pre-BTS life or their families.
Yes.
And I genuinely like it like that, because any other memoir would have from birth, from the there's nothing. We still don't know who Jin's father is.
No.
Whatever
no.
rich man that is. We'll
don't.
never know.
I mean, to be fair,
We don't
most
need
of
to
them
know.
probably don't want to be public
No,
figures
I'm just
anyway,
saying, like,
so it's
anyway
fair.
speaking, most public figures talk a lot about their pre-life. They're very, like, nothing about BTS's personal life is in this book.
Like, there's very minimal
And I very
information
much
on their
appreciate that.
families and, like, everything like that. It's very focused on only their music career.
Yeah, even anything that's, like, their personal friendships, or, like, not saying that, like, none of my business romantic relationships, nothing about that is in this book. And I like that.
No.
I do
It's
too.
only focused on the music.
I like that it's specifically about
I
the
like
music
that a lot.
career.
The members, yeah.
Because
Another
it's
thing
like,
they
I
go-
don't think I'm not reading this book because I want to know them better as a people. It's
No.
like, it's very much set up to
That's
be like,
none
this
of
is
my-
a just,
that's
this
none
is
of my
just about their
business.
careers, and like, that's what the book is.
Yeah. Exactly. Very straightforward.
Also, for seven
I mean,
people,
as it should
that's
be.
probably better to keep it on the music, considering this is not one of their, like, this is not a one-person
Yeah.
biography. This is a this is a biography of the group
Yeah.
BTS.
It'd be one thing if they did an individual biography for each individual
Even then, I
member.
don't think the members of BTS want us, and I don't think they need to.
No, I don't think
That's
they want
none of
to
my
at this point.
again, that is none of my business.
I have one other thing in the
Also-
Wings era here that was just like really a mindfuck to me because it's not how I remember it at all. Where BTS rebranded from Bulletproof Boy Scouts to be on the scene in July 2017. That feels,
feels
I do
so
remember
so
I do
way
remember
earlier.
That. So
That feels
earlier.
like so like
I
multiple
remember it
years
happening,
earlier.
but for some reason, that feels like it wasn't Wings era.
Like if you told me
That
that,
feels like it was
I
later.
would have thought it was in 2019,
I know.
2020.
It
Like
feels- it
it
feels later.
so much earlier than
It
I
does,
thought. Like
honestly.
Yeah, I remember it happening. I remember being surprised, but I
Same.
did not remember that being
that
Wings
was
era.
so much
Another
earlier
thing
than
that
I
they brought
thought.
up, which is a thing that I remember people freaking out about, they spent a decent amount of time talking about the Wings concept book.
Yes.
That behemoth
Oh, yeah.
of a thing.
Yes, yes.
God, I remember that
thick
era.
ass, thick book.
That
yeah.
thing looked really cool.
was
Another
such a big book.
time during the Wings era that is shade that people don't. Again, people are really only talking about one moment of shade in this book. Is that they talk about how Suga states some people jeered at us when we went on stage, which is not about other people. It's about fans. People
Yeah.
don't misread.
It's just crazy to me that the people are like who haven't even read the book are just like making.
So we
these
had this idea that there
assumptions.
were quite a lot of people who were hostile to us. Yeah, that is about people in crowds. That is not about other artists. Media literacy is dead.
Oh, don't even get me started on media literacy.
Also, actual
certain
literacy
stuff.
is dead because this is just words on a page. Read them correctly.
Guys,
My next one is another just sad sugar quote.
Hold on. Let me get to... Because I also have that sad sugar quote, I think. Which one is yours?
I have. Now I look at fan responses on occasion a lot, actually, to
Oh,
build
yeah.
up self-esteem because I get the feeling I need to know that I am loved, and I'm like, oh man, my guy.
Damn, sir.
Oh
Like,
God.
not that me
well,
saying it's...
I feel like Sugar is like almost the reality voice of a lot of famous
Oh,
people
for
in a
sure.
way
Sugar,
in this book.
this is... Suga's being very vulnerable about a thing that I think is a way more common occurrence
Yeah.
than
Oh
many
yeah, he's
people would
he's
like
just one of
to
the few
admit.
that's willing to
Yeah,
talk
like
about
not
it
a lot of
openly.
people would admit to that, but Suga not afraid to talk about it publicly, which is honestly great for him.
So on to the next thing I have, which is that they talk about how Spring Day is just still on the charts.
Yep.
Which
That
good
and
for
also
them.
the connect. They do
They
also
talk
talk
a
about
lot
the
about
connections
Spring
to
Day.
Saywall.
Good for-
They
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about the connections to Saywall.
They
too.
do say that they never
Yeah.
can officially confirm that was it was about, but they do talk about that
No,
entire
they have-
situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, they talk about the breakup at the
The
not breakup,
2018?
but the 2018 Mamas where
Yeah.
they talk. They put a transcript of when they thought they were gonna break up, and that is a thing I was curious if they were gonna address in this book. And they're like, nah, we were in a bad place we were burnt out. That's what they were talking about.
Oh yeah, they were absolutely
burnt out.
at that
But
time.
the weird thing about it is that they don't really stop.
Mm-hmm.
They just sort of got over, like, they took that month break, which I don't even think is when this happened, and they just sort of kept going. Weird.
It was like, and also the taking a
Also,
break.
they make-
It's like whenever BTS says they're gonna take a break, are they really taking a break? Like,
No. Considering we're currently in their military break and they're doing 18 things. All
well,
of them are
it's more
doing
so they're
things.
taking a pause from group
Well,
activities.
they can't do group activities.
technically,
2 of them are
official
gone,
group.
and also RM is going because he shaved his head. RM's going, and it is a matter. By the time this comes out, RM might already be going because he shaved his head.
Yeah.
That is a sign.
Yeah, and then Sugar. Who knows? Sugar's
Suga's
probably the next
probably
one
at
to
the
really
end of
eyeing
his
to go
tour.
in. Yeah.
His tour might be finishing, but I think they're gonna let RM go first and then give him his time to chill after the tour and then go. Also, we love that we continue the next random movie reference, and this is the 2018 film Bohemian Rhapsody.
oh yes.
Yeah, because that was huge in Korea at that time, like massively popular.
Just
From
the
what I
comparison
gathered, from
of,
what I paid attention
BTS
to,
to the Beatles
massively
is
popular.
just
It gets
also-
brought up, and also to Queen.
also to Queen. But there's so many references in this book where BTS is just referenced compared to the
But
Beatles.
never by the groups themselves.
No, and it's also so wild because that's a thing that I just forget about because I just do not pay attention to the Western media talking about BTS, and I forgot how much they love to compare BTS to the Beatles.
They love it.
Like,
I mean, let's be honest. The Western media love to compare anybody to the Beatles. Everyone and anyone.
Because the Beatles were that crazy of a juggernaut to them that they don't really have another quote-unquote foreign group comparison besides the Beatles.
But even American
really.
groups can compare. They love to compare anybody to the fucking Beatles, and it's quite sad. I have another sad Suga quote.
oh yes.
I thought a lot more about people. I learned how cunning and cruel some can be. So from then onward, I didn't look much at the responses to us online.
Oh man.
Love.
Yeah,
we go from him
Negative criticism online. Yikes.
and cunning and cruel.
Sad. People
Oh yeah,
suck,
they did.
man.
You know, on that note, they did talk a lot about some like cyberbullying or like just a lot of like online negativity towards the group. I think around 2017, 2018 specifically, they highlighted. They did mention that quite a bit. They didn't go into super details, but they mentioned it. They brought up a lot about online responses to them.
Oh, it's really about. So RM talks about. My next one is about RM talking about speaking English.
Mhm.
Which is until the 2018 I found it stressful like talking about him having to answer all the English questions. I found it very stressful every time. I couldn't always come up with answers just like that, so I learned English really as a matter of survival. Which really is a very different answer than what he always gives, which is that he learned it from friends.
Yeah.
Like, no, this man was, like, carrying this group in these English interviews, just, like... I like that now more so they do actually have an actual translator a lot of times, because there's been more and more interviews of them just answering in Korean and then having a translator. So that, like, that is more dispersed out with other members.
Right.
Especially the ones that don't want to speak English.
There's just this one man who has to be the voice of the entire group. Like, that's gotta be hard for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, you're dealing with, like, there's things that they definitely want to say, but they don't have the words for it, because those words are hard. English is hard, man.
It is. English kind of sucks, to be honest. I have a lot less tabs the longer I go into this
I do
book.
too.
Because my
the next thing
one
I have is
on
from
the Stephen Colbert show.
The next one I have is, I don't even know where this is in comparison, was them making a slight reference to JYJ.
Oh.
Because it's just
that's wild.
For idols that have not a reference totally, but for idols that debuted, their contract is 7 years, and because they're talking about BTS re-signing super early and signing for a full 7 years. So they give context of, in 2009, Korea Fair Trade Commission established a standard exclusive contract for performers, and I'm like, they can't mention it, but it's JYJ.
You know why that's?
It's because of JYJ.
They can't mention it, but they did. Love that. Also, I love that RM's talking about, like, we signed for 7 years, we're very happy about it, and then Suga just says, we wondered whether we should quit. Thank you, Suga.
Thank you for bringing the reality
Beacon of positivity.
Well, him and other people probably, it was probably a discussion point. Probably a discussion point, I imagine.
Oh, no, it was. They thought they were going to disband the year before, but, like, we love Suga's beacon of positivity. Mm-hmm. Another beacon of positivity is Jungkook out here being like, one time, after filming, I went out drinking alone. And drinking alone, I felt hopeless. Thank you, Jungkook. You're a child.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, the more I think about it too, I think you
then
also
again,
it's
this
from
also was the
it's from
time
the context
that
of a culture
Jimin
where
and
you don't really eat alone. Technically, you usually eat with a person.
No, he wanted. This isn't eating. He was only drinking.
True, but I think it's the same thing when it comes to drinking.
Also, I love that Jimin and J-Hope went out to just sort of help him out. Mm-hmm. I have a lot less tabs as we go.
My next one, all I had was when they again to the Beatles comparison, where
I have the same one where they did
went
that
on the
Stephen Colbert,
where it was in black and white, just like the Beatles had been 50 years ago.
Where it was a specific Beatles homage.
It's so weird that they had BTS do a weird Beatles memorial performance. It's very weird.
Yeah, very weird. Not necessarily.
When you think about it, yeah, kind of weird.
Then we have RM with another sad quote. To this day, when I see my name in the entertainment section of the news, I get scared. I sometimes imagine the kind of headlines that might come out one day. Not someone who deserves the fame. Not really talented. Actually mediocre. Very bad. Look at him as he is. That's also a phrase of look at him as he is, sir.
Damn.
Sir. That phrase, but, like, that phrasing is specifically, like, cruel. Like, that is a very deep-seated, like, oof. Like, actually kind of...
I also feel like, though, this is kind of a reference to, like, a hot scandal that just completely derails your career and everything you work for. I think
the other ones make me think that he feels like there's all of BTS in this book comes out that they have bad imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that is very much the case.
This book feels
honestly, I probably would too.
I think that's a thing that all famous people have, unless you're
honestly,
narcissist.
if you don't have like imposter syndrome, you're probably a shitty person. Yeah.
Yeah, no, every member of BTS in this comes out with such like extreme imposter syndrome.
I have this other one. It's from when they were doing their Speak Yourself Stadium tour, and it's just talking about how if you, like Jin was saying, if I went to an amusement park in the middle of the day, it gave me a lot of heartache because I might go with a manager or a bodyguard or an interpreter, but I couldn't get them to have fun because even if I did, it was work for them in the end, so I was having fun all by myself. It was like,
that's so sad.
Yeah, I mean, that is the reality of it, because it's like he needs protection. They can't just be loose. They have to do a job.
During Love Yourself, Suga's talking about the anxiety that comes after great success. I could see it ending badly, the kind of ending that happens to successful people. there's this feeling that people were waiting for us
Oh, yes,
below
yes.
thinking, when are they gonna fall from there? And I realized that when the situation was over, that the anxiety is simply shapeshifting into different forms. Which is, I think, him also talking about, which is also directly what he wrote Shadow about.
Yes, absolutely.
That's just the imagery in Shadow.
Oh, this other
Very-
one
a
I
lot of
have
vulnerability.
from Suga at the tour. It says, I was just resigned. Our schedule was so packed that it was a matter of, is my body going to break first or my mind? And I'm like, oh man.
Oh boy.
Oh, it just doesn't end for him.
Yeah, he's like, you know, doing all this touring and shit. You know, you're physically exhausted, you're mentally exhausted, and also he had the bad shoulder
Yeah.
too. I think this was before.
This is
he got the
before, yeah, that's
surgery, so,
before
like,
the shoulder.
He
There-
probably
the sh-
he could
they talked
have
about
potentially
the-
had some chronic pain. He could have like, yeah, I would be fucking worn out. Like I think I've not on their level, but I definitely experienced a point in my life where I was just constantly working and being physically and mentally exhausted. And I think Sammy, I think you can relate to that too. And you know, you just feel like a zombie. You feel like a fucking zombie, and you're just like, fucking. It's not good.
No.
It's not good at all. It really
At
messes
some
with you,
point,
but-
V, because around this era of BTS, as a BTS fan, a lot of people started talking about how V had, I think this is a reference to that V had quote-unquote changed as a person, because he became not the 21-year-old kid that they once knew.
Mhm.
And he just very clearly
Well,
says, I
adults change.
tell myself a lot that I want to become a better, happier person. And I'm like, yeah, in time he talks about, like, looking back on himself, going back to his, like, childhood, middle school, and all that other stuff, and I'm like, yeah, it's about evolution and change. You will not stay the same person that you were at 21.
Mhm.
And I do think that it was good for them to at least address it, because V and Jimin both are the two members in this that have the least amount of these very stressful quotes.
Yes.
They sort of seemed like they were not chilling. They were still burnt out and with these heavy schedules, but they have a different outlook on it.
Yeah, for sure.
In a way, or at least publicly
Yeah.
outward facing have a different outlook on it. They don't necessarily want to...
Because we have all of these, like, depressing sugar quotes, but there is an equal amount of, like, not quite as depressing, but really sad quotes from both, like, RM and J-Hope and Jungkook.
And Jin.
And Jin. Yeah, like, those four.
Everyone
like, those
seems
ones
very
are also
stressed.
very stressed, yeah.
There's considerably less from Jimin and V.
Yes, for sure.
But there still are some. But overall, their tone seems a little more uplifting. And, you know, I think that's just... It's a lot of different perspectives on fame in this book.
Yeah.
Oh, at some point they talk about TXT.
Oh
Yay,
yeah,
TXT.
Briefly. We
Shout out
do
to
acknowledge that
TXT.
TXT exists as a group. Hello.
And sold 77,000 units in their first week.
Yep.
So great for the Dream Chapter star. And 3 years later, Minisode 2, Thursday's Child, would go on to clear
Thursday's
1.4
Child.
million units.
let's
Thank
go
you,
Thursday's Child.
Thank you, book, for
Woo!
telling me about the sales
The
numbers of
TXT
Thursday's
album,
Child.
Thursday's Child.
I kind of
I mean, I don't know why, but I guess it was a show like,
Hey.
hey, look, the brother group doing well too, so we're winning.
Another one
I
of the
don't know.
songs they talk a lot about in BTS in this book is they go on to 7 and they talk a lot about Black Swan and how that's like another like big
Yeah.
song in their discography.
I mean, Black Swan was really
Mhm.
beautiful and just gorgeous and just loved it. Very artisanal. And they even talked about that, what was that? That
The
like,
Kinetic
dance
Manifesto
crew?
film.
Yeah, and the dance crew that did
Yeah.
that dance to the,
And they talk
was it
about-
orchestra recording?
Yeah, they also
Of
talk
that.
about the 2 versions of that video and why there are 2, and I'm like, that's nice. I do wish that other one had like a studio version of it, because that one's also
That one
really
is
good.
super good, yeah.
Yeah, or like a single of
Right.
that release,
The
which I'm kind of
strings in that
surprised they
are so
haven't
good.
released that yet, but...
Another thing in this era, a thing I disagree with, which is On was destined to become an iconic song in BTS's catalog. Where?
When?
What?
When is that song the one that was like
When
yes,
was that a thing?
on? That's
On
not
isn't
one that
even the
people go
iconic
back
song
to.
from 7. I would say Black Swan's the iconic song
Honestly.
from 7. Just saying. On, nothing.
I mean, I do like On a lot,
I like
though, will
On,
say.
but
do
I
like
wouldn't
On a
call
lot.
On an iconic moment in the BTS catalog. if you're looking at a high up, I would honestly put Fire, and I would even put Not Today above in the icon status over On.
Yeah.
Icon
Yeah,
and
probably.
talking about
Even
high octane,
even Mic Drop is up there.
honestly
above them,
speaking,
yeah.
in terms of iconic BTS performances, I would honestly put Idol above it too. Not in quality, but maybe in terms of icon status.
I mean, they did go into depth, and
They also talk about Idol. Idol somehow keeps coming up in this book. They keep talking about Idol, the song.
Yeah.
Suga talks about we've entered the pandemic era.
Oh, I also got a quote of Suga saying he's got what is it? I have 2 dreams. One is to become an old white-haired man still standing on stage and playing his guitar and singing, and the other is to become a licensed psychological therapist.
I hope he gets that second one.
And this whole quote is about how he studied psychology because he thinks it's very helpful for his music. So maybe that's the reason why he's being able to be so open, because he's very introspective of himself.
It makes sense.
It does.
It completely makes sense.
Another one I want to talk about is Suga's pandemic quote, which is, "What should I be doing during the pandemic was the only thing I could think about the whole time." Fair,
honestly,
because so much.
I mean, if you think about it, they were traveling so often. It's kind of like, honestly, now you can't do much.
But here's the thing: that's the other thing about the pandemic is I feel like everyone's just doing so many hobbies and shit, and I'm like, yeah, that's the other thing of just all of this time, and yet what do I do with it other than worry about what I should be doing with all of this time I'll never have again?
Also, in this
relatable
this pandemic era, we name drop Squid Game in here as well.
We do name drop Squid Game
for no reason other than the promotional
being popular
Dynamite,
media.
the other Korean global hit Squid Game that were released a year later, and it's just really no reason for it to be in here. But
I mean, maybe 5 pages after that, we also name drop the BTS McDonald's meal.
Oh yes, of course.
That did happen.
True.
BTS McDonald's meal, very fun.
All them chicken fingers.
So many chicken nuggets.
And I wish they kept the sauces, though. I like the sauces. I mean, that's what really made the meal.
Yeah, that was what
meal
was
special,
really fun about
it. Yeah, the sauces were good.
I want the sauces back.
The bags were also it was so weird.
I was just flipping through this because you know how it's split into chapters, and the chapters are based off of their albums, and then they have these little bolded sections on other stuff, and I just flipped past one that just says "smooth like butter, firm like BTS," and I'm like, what does that mean?
I don't know.
There's a couple in here that were questionable.
Yeah.
I like to talk about another name drop, but for good. They mention that when part of they're talking about Universe, the Coldplay song that they did, and they say that Chris Martin is one of the most sincere overseas artists I've ever met.
That, yes.
And then they talk about how we ran into several kinds of artists overseas. There was the kind that was like, "Oh, you guys are famous these days. Good job, I guess. Go for it." And seem to look down on us a little, and those who are all business go, "I really want to do a song with you." And the third category, the people who are oddly positioned between those two, that first one doesn't seem like a compliment.
No, absolutely
That first one
not
seems
a
like,
compliment.
"Oh, you're a cute little thing."
Look at this cute little Korean boy band that's here in America. That's not very, I don't like that.
I don't think that they meant, I think they can't say full heart that that's what they're saying.
But it is what they're saying.
But that's what they're saying. They're like, "Oh,
That
look
is
at
what
these
they're
cute
saying.
little Korean group.
Yeah,
They're cute for now." And apparently Chris Martin is the most genuine person that they met.
Honestly,
in this whole...
love that for him.
Good for that.
He's a good person.
At least they found a good person.
Right. Then they talk about the UN speech in here a little bit
They talk about their first Grammy performance too.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, so I'm at the end. I'm at the last Grammy performance. I want to talk about something I wanted them to address. Which was what did V say to Olivia Rodrigo?
They
lied. I genuinely think they lied in this book. Apparently he said nothing.
Apparently he said nothing to
I
Olivia
do
Rodrigo.
not believe that.
Which I find funny.
I do not believe that. He said something he doesn't want to say.
According to the book, he said he was too stressed that he just said absolutely nothing.
No words.
Yeah.
But also, why did she react like that then?
Right?
Did they coordinate? Did management coordinate with her? If someone said nothing to me, I wouldn't gasp like they were asking me out. What the hell? Not that that's what he was saying, but it seems very
suspicious.
Maybe he doesn't remember what he said, and I would believe that too if he was that stressed. I believe
That he
that
just
more
like
than the fact
blacked
that he
out
just
and was just like, I
opened
said
his-
something, but I don't know what. But I can't admit that
He's
now.
Yeah, like, I have no idea what I said to Olivia Rodrigo. I'm like, fair enough, of course
Fair
you don't.
point.
Fair point. But yeah, no, that's the only part of this book where I'm like, I don't know if I believe that. But sure. Again, I want to hear it from Olivia Rodrigo's perspective.
Yes.
If she cares to
She'll
talk
We'll
about
never
have
that.
to wait for the Olivia Rodrigo autobiography.
Autobiography.
If she cares, if she remembers to even mention that short
I doubt she.
conversation,
I
that
doubt
would
she.
be.
I doubt
absolutely
it.
would not.
But also, I love the Olivia Rodrigo was put in this book.
Yes.
Also, was surprised that then we get... Is this going backwards? I don't know. But then they talk about Ithaca Holdings, too.
Oh yeah.
That has nothing directly to do with BTS,
They do
but
just
they do
like
talk about
they
Ithaca
do just
Holdings.
throw that in there at some point. They do also throw in the mention that like at some point Big Hit has become high, but we don't go into the full details of what that's about.
No,
We just
because
mention
I don't
that
think
it
that's
happens.
necessarily the most important thing.
We do at the end of this book get this really fun like timeline of BTS history, which is cute.
Oh, before we get to that, I want to get to the last thing I've put in this book. Apparently, J-Hope blew up the Time BTS cover and has that in his living room.
That's so funny.
That is a choice of decor.
So
That
funny.
is K-drama decor.
It is.
I'm sorry.
That is
K-drama
K-drama decor to have in your house.
That is-
a giant
would only-
poster of yourself.
of your group in your living room. In
Yeah.
my mind, it is the focal point over the mantelpiece type
God.
situation. Like, that is a statement piece in his living room. Wild.
Oh. So I've just now, because we were talking about trying to figure out when the interviews for this book take place. I'm literally just looked at the back cover of the book. It says written over 3 years of in-depth coverage. So this man was doing interviews with BTS for 3 years for this book.
Oh yeah, over the course of 3 years. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Over the course of 3 years, yeah.
I mean, that makes sense because like when would they all have the time to just sit
Mhm.
down and go
Yeah.
through like everything?
Still. This is a lot. I like this book.
It's a really,
I think
it's
this was
really
a very
good
well put
book.
together book. I mean, honestly speaking, this book did not need to be this good.
No.
This book could have been a fluff. It could have been a 200-page fluff piece.
It could have
And
been,
it
but
could
they
have been
didn't.
Was
written by
not.
like a shitty K-pop journalist who has no who has like no knowledge or intention of putting in like the context of like K-pop and what else
No.
is happening in K-pop or the group like for
Honestly,
make
this
the book
book
make
could have
sense.
been you've seen them. You've seen them. If you've ever been to a grocery store or a Barnes and Noble, you've seen the little BTS books that are like mostly pictures that are always there that are like the unauthorized bullshit.
Yep.
And I'm like, this book could have been an authorized that, and it would have still sold the same amount of copies. They did not need to do all
But
of
it was
this.
like so
And
extensive
it's so much better
so
than it is.
well written. It's just like I really give a lot of props to the author of this book who spent 3 years doing interviews
Oh,
and then
yeah.
did extensive research on BTS
so
and
much
the
research.
K-pop industry.
I mean, this
like,
book
it's so
was
good,
done
actually.
with care. There's so much care in this book.
Yeah.
From him, from the members of BTS who were very introspective and very personal with it. Like, they didn't need to say half of the shit they said in this book.
And maybe it's because I'm so
from-
used to like all of the things I consume about K-pop being like shitty written like
Fluff
pieces and like articles by journalists
Either
who clearly
fluff-
don't have any idea what they're
Yeah.
talking about. Like,
Oh yeah,
It's
that-
50-50.
oh, God,
Either
yeah,
it
don't
is
even get me
it is
started.
not well put together, like trying to be a hit piece, but using tired, old, inaccurate information.
Right.
Or it's a fluff piece that doesn't actually say anything. And this was well researched, well done.
I know it was very good as a book. I can see
Honest-
how people would find it boring in a way, I guess, because I mean, there's no
Again, if you're in
there's
here-
no drama here. It's just a
If you're
history
in here
of their career.
for the celebrity memoir of it all, you're not gonna. This isn't a celebrity memoir.
No.
And also, K-pop was never going to get a celebrity memoir because you're never going to get anyone talking about somebody. You might get vague references, but even then, that's an
The
oof.
defamation
Oh,
laws
yeah.
are too strong. In
The
South Korea
defamation
for
laws will be
Yeah.
insane. But like overall, I do think that this is honestly speaking, with the way K-pop is now, with what everything is, with the way with the amount of NDAs these people have probably signed left, right, and center,
Oh yeah.
I think this is the best K-pop memoir that we could get.
Yeah.
Because it does make references and it does talk about the good, the bad. the ugly, even though BTS overall has not been a part of the ugliest parts of this industry. They've been part of the ugly parts.
Right.
But to my knowledge, they haven't been.
Parts, but
there's
like,
uglier parts
right.
that they have not, thankfully, been
allegedly,
subjected to.
Allegedly, they haven't been, to what we know.
I mean, to what we know of, and also at this point, I feel like if you've reached BTS levels of success, who's to say anything? But like,
you think
to
they would
our
have said
knowledge,
something
nothing.
by
Like
now,
by this
but who
point,
knows?
something would have happened. I feel like.
Yeah,
like
you
who
would think. But
someone
then
would have
again, you
said
never
Like
know.
by this
Yeah.
point. It's the same thing I built, like, it's genuinely, like, how I believe, like, at this point, I think we know what K-pop members, especially in a group like BTS, if any of them was a shitty person, we would know.
Yeah, we would.
Honestly speaking,
because that's
we would
what
know.
happens
There's
with
so
groups
many...
these days, where if any group who is like unsuccessful or just starts gaining success, everyone comes out of the woodwork with like whatever they have.
Oh my
to
god,
cause
so
the
much
problem.
woodwork.
Yeah.
Like, BTS had the luckiness of being, like, underrated for a while, so, like, anything that could have come out should have come out. And now it's like, if anything comes out at this point, it's been 10 years. What the fuck? We would know if they were shitty people by this point,
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah.
We're at year 10, so happy 10 years, BTS.
Happy 10-year anniversary to BTS.
Like 2 months late, but hey.
Very
Good for them.
Very good.
Yeah,
book.
happy 10 years, guys.
I mean, a very
I
good
do
book.
have one gripe with the book, which is a really petty gripe with the book, but it's my one complaint about
the
it.
little tab thing?
No, yeah, so you know those little pages in the middle that are just all like, they're just one color and they have a quote on them?
Oh yeah, the quote
the quotes
pages?
on those pages don't make any sense. Like, we could have picked
No, the
way
quote on those
more
pages, I started ignoring
way more impactful quotes on those. It's just like, they just spun a wheel and put a quote on there. Like, some of them, they like are, this is like, I feel like the quote should be more impactful than the ones they chose to put on there and those special little pages.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't think we've talked about like, even quotes we tabbed, I don't think, any of these quotes were ever used in anything we talked about.
No.
Then again, I don't think putting the quote of Suga asking, "Is there a god?"
Is there a god?
on a page is necessarily what the vibe they were going
No.
for.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Then again, one of these I just randomly flipped to is, I think Dynamite was our way of overcompensating.
Oh man.
Which is just them talking about how Dynamite is so positive when they're in the middle of a pandemic.
One of these quotes literally just says, it was like, this was the beginning, our beginning. And I'm like, that's nice, but it literally, like, what are we
What does that
saying
mean?
here?
Yeah, they don't give that much context
No.
to the quotes, but they are very funny. But yeah, no.
That's my one gripe with the book, but that's
yeah.
really it.
Honestly, I do kind of like the book. I like that, like, there's a little, like, book. It's not a cover, because it's only, like, a tiny little portion that has all the members' names.
It's a half sleeve.
and faces.
It has, the
It's a
book
half
is a
sleeve.
hardcover that has half a sleeve on it.
Also, I just looked at it. If you open that, it has, it has QR codes to their Instagram, TikTok, Weverse, their blog, their Facebook, their YouTube, and their Twitter.
Yo, yeah.
Nice.
Just so you know where to follow them on all the social media
Yes,
platforms.
yes, and it's in
But
the fun
honestly,
form
if
of
you
a
take
QR
that
code.
off, I also kind of really like the cover of this book. Because it's very simple. Like, you don't... I like that it's not a picture of BTS.
Yes, I do like that. That we went
I
for
do think
classy
that's
Well,
covers.
a
the
lot
slip,
though.
the slip though does have all their
The
faces.
slip does, but the slip...
Right, but
I
it's
took
not
the
like
slip
a
off, and I
gaudy,
don't
like,
read
group
it with the
pictures,
slip.
like a weird concept
Yeah.
photo of them. It's just like the 7
Yeah.
of them, but
Like,
they each took like a professional work portrait, and then they're all in a collage type situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, no one really... the book that is there for, like, eye-catching and being like, hey, oh, the BTS book's in stores, let me go grab it.
Yeah.
And then no one reads the book with the... I took the slip off. I haven't put it back on, because when I'm reading it, I'm like, the slip is just
It
annoying.
just kind of gets in the way because it's only half a sleeve. Like, it's kind of
Yeah.
annoying.
Then again, I take the slips off of all of my books, because I hate them. But overall, I think this was a really well put... better than it needed to be, and better than it should have been, but really well done.
Yes, for a book that was gonna sell well regardless of how well it was written, it was a very well done book to begin with. So
Honestly
give 'em
speaking, I do
mad
think
props for that.
overall, with how not depressing, because overall I think the book is still positive, and I think the group is still overall in a positive place. I do almost think that, like, it's not as fun as I think a lot of people would like.
Would probably expect it or want
would
it
probably
to be,
expect
yeah.
or want it to be.
That's
I almost
fair.
think it being so vulnerable, like in the eyes of in overall as a piece of literature makes it far better.
Yeah.
But like as a BTS book, almost makes it worse in the eyes of some people. Like I think it's a more risky
Right.
thing that
Yeah,
they did
it
with
is.
it. Like
Yeah.
it's not the safe choice. The
No.
safe choice is the fluff piece.
That's
The
true,
safe-
yeah.
The safe choice is this is half the length, has a ton more pictures, and it's a fluff piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, I like risks,
I feel
man.
like this is definitely written for like BTS's like longtime like adult fans. Like this.
Oh,
I
yeah.
Like I
For
wouldn't.
us.
Like us.
Like I wouldn't give. I
Us?
wouldn't recommend
us.
this book necessarily to like a teenager like who was a
No.
fan and just like wants to know more about them because I don't think they would necessarily find it that interesting. But
No. But overall, I would recommend this to people that know nothing about K-pop.
yes, I would too.
Like, I would recommend it to people that like music
as like
but
a,
don't
as
know
like
anything
a
about K-pop.
good starting point to like learn about a K-pop group. Yeah.
Or people that, like, just like boy bands or like groups or like musicians. And I do think that this is just a very good, like, it's a memoir, but just talking about the reality, and then you can, if you have the thing, just put that into this is sort of the reality of being a young musician in the 2020s, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are obviously BTS's own personal experiences, but dear God, if they are not, probably relatable to a lot of other ones, and the same feelings are being had.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
By a lot of other people.
And other artists too, even
Oh, yeah.
everywhere around the world.
And especially if you're like honestly, I would recommend this to adult K-pop fans, even if you hate BTS. Like, even if you are not a BTS fan.
Yeah, honestly, it's...
I would read this, because
Yeah.
honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if members of other groups mentioned in this book, SHINee, EXO, Winner, if they can relate to
Like clearly, if
what
you
BTS
hate,
is talking
If
about.
you hate BTS and are gonna go into it with that attitude, you're gonna hate the book no matter what.
You're
But,
gonna
like,
hate
that's
it,
on
but
you
I'm
at
saying
that
if you
point.
are not a BTS fan, but you're still a K-pop fan, I think that this gives a lot of empathy.
It does.
I think if you read this book, you feel a lot of empathy toward
Oh yeah, you do.
K-pop idols as a whole.
Yeah.
You have to. If you come out of this not feeling empathy for K-pop idols,
You might be
I
a
worry
terrible
for you.
person.
Mhm.
you might be the problem.
But yes, that has been the BTS book, Beyond the Story. I don't know if we actually ever said the title of the book over the course of this episode,
I don't.
but the
Oh,
book.
also, who wrote this book?
It's-
Because we also keep mentioning
The
him,
book
but
was
we do
written
not
by
say his.
Myeongseok Kang, and the book is
Myeongseok
called Beyond
Kang.
the Story. If anyone is curious and didn't know where to look for it, at the
Because I
end
realized
of
we
this,
never said his name
at
either.
the end of this almost 2-hour episode on this book, we have finally said the title and author of the book. Here you go,
Whoops.
everybody.
Whoops.
Surprise!
What a surprise.
He did a great job.
Great, super good
10
job
out of
writing
10.
that book. What
Write
a great job by that
the
guy.
history of K-pop.
Yeah.
Write the history of K-pop. You do amazing job.
Yes. But we are available on all major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We also have a YouTube channel where we post all of our episodes along with clip videos occasionally as well. And with that, we will see you all in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.